group of islands which lie almost north and south along 145 degrees east longitude and between 13 and 20 degrees north latitude. The north-south length of the group is about 420 miles. Second largest and most populous of the Marianas is Saipan Island, approximately 12.5 miles long, 5 miles wide in the central portion, with a total area of about 72 square miles. In this area, the year can be divided into two seasons: the dry season from December to June, and the wet season from July to November. Between May and October, easterly winds predominate, but with considerable percentages from southerly and westerly directions. Velocity from 10 to 11 knots. Summer is the wet season with an average of from 17 to 23 rainy days per month. In general, the east coast of Saipan was free of barrier or fringing reefs. The south coast has a narrow fringing reef and a steep gradient. The west coast was almost entirely protected by fringing and barrier type reefs, breached once at Canoa and in 4 places at Garapan. The only good anchorage was located off Canoa, outside the reef, during easterly winds. With a few unimportant exceptions, landing beaches along the eastern coast were non-existent. Along the south coast, there were abrupt banks and undercut cliffs, with a maximum elevation of 50 feet. With the exception of a few minor sections, the entire western coast has a fairly wide sandy beach. From the base of Aguinian Point to the reef opening near Canoa, the beach extended 2,750 yards in length and was 7 to 15 yards wide. Wharves, a wharf and 3 piers at Tanapag Harbor. This is the only harbor in which there was a partial protection from all winds. The entrance channel was about 1,800 yards long, 235 feet wide, with a minimum depth of 22.5 feet. The government pier at Garapan, and 900 yards north, there was a boat construction and repair yard. There also was a pier at Canoa. Along the center of Saipan, running generally north and south, was a mountainous ridge. Principal peaks were Mount Tapacho, 1,554 feet. Mount Marpi, 853 feet. Mount Cagman, 479 feet. Mount Nafutan, 407 feet. On the eastern side of Marpi Point were a number of limestone caves. At Mount Marpi, there was a single sheer cliff almost 600 feet high. The northern portion of the ridge was broken by a series of 2 to 4 terraces, separated by rocky cliffs. Canoa Marsh, also called Lake Susupi, included a freshwater lake. Half a mile southwest of the lake was a swamp covering 25 acres. 3 sugarcane plantations were situated on Saipan. Number 1 occupied most of the southern portion. Number 2 formed the east central peninsula. And number 3 occupied all of the flat land around the northern end, a distance of about 12 miles. About 70% of Saipan was under sugar cultivation. In the vicinity of Canoa, some of the area was devoted to vegetable farming. Garapan Town, main settlement, was second in size in the Marianas, being exceeded in population and importance only by Agana in Guam. Population about 10,000, 3/4 of whom were Japanese. Canoa covered an area of about 1 square mile. There were a number of other small settlements. Good roads encircled the island, and also crossed the island at Carabera Pass, from Flores Point to the eastern coast, and east from Canoa. A good network of roads extended throughout the southern part of the island. Practically all roads could be shelled from the sea. A fairly well-developed system of secondary roads and trails existed in most sections of the island. A railroad with several spur lines almost encircled the island.
there were approximately 20,000 Japanese civilians. The natives consisted of about 4,000 Kanakas and Okinawans. The population was mainly engaged in sugarcane production.
In general, there was little food produced in excess of the needs of the civilian population. There was little fresh water. Most of the drinking water was obtained by storage of rainwater.
Sanitation at Saipan was generally fair. However, there were no sewage systems. Toilet systems were primitive. Mosquitoes were abundant in all parts of the island, however, not the Anopheles type.
Prevailing diseases were dysentery, eye troubles, yaws, dengue fever, tuberculosis, typhoid and paratyphoid, as well as occasional cases of venereal diseases and a few isolated cases of leprosy.
Principal airfield in Saipan was the Aslito Strip. At Charankanoa, there was a runway strip, which actually was little more than the widening of a road at that point. The third airfield was on the northern coast near Moppy Point. A major seaplane base with 5 hangars and 2 large ramps was at Flores Point. From studies of recent reconnaissance photographs, it was apparent that the garrison forces in the Marianas had been considerably reinforced since the latter part of February, and it was estimated that by the Saipan target date, the garrisons would consist of a total of about 30,000 men, including 7,000 construction personnel. The Japanese were capable of establishing a strong defense at all probable landing beaches, but withholding a strong mobile reserve. It appeared from a study of recent aerial reconnaissance, the Japanese had installed strong defensive installations in the whole of Naputan Point, the Aslito airfield area, the vicinity of the Charankanoa airstrip, the area at the southern end of Garapan Town, the area at the northeast end of Garapan Town, the area to the southeast of Marpy Point, vicinity of the new airstrip, the area north of Flores Point, and would use a large mobile reserve to meet the attacks as they would develop. Landmines were to be expected on all probable landing beaches as well as on exits from beaches.